PSG then through to the semi-finals where, of course, they'll meet the winner of the Arsenal-Real Madrid tie on Wednesday. But for a game we thought was dead and buried at 5-1, Aston Villa made quite the fight of it. Frank, goodness knows what he's wearing, is with us. We'll hear from Frank in a moment. But Craig, half an hour gone, 5-1 down, switch it off.
Which is certainly how I thought the tie was going to go, because of the quality of this PSG side. And I was just sitting thinking, yeah, kind of easy to call this one, wasn't it? You know, Villa, you know, workmanlike, quarterfinals, back in the Champions League after 40 years, but a bridge too far. And then PSG in the second half almost just capitulated. You know, the defending, the shape. You know, John McGinn picks the ball up from Pau Torres midway in his own half. There's only Vitinha in the midfield at this point, and he's going to the left. He's allowed to run 70 to 80 yards and get a strike away. And you have to say, PSG are a good side, but they did not have their best tonight. And Luis Enrique will breathe a sigh of relief. For Villa, I didn't think they had that in them at this level. I know they're a good side. They're fighting for, you know, 4th or 5th in the Premier League. That's about where they are. I did not think they had this second half performance in them, where but for Donnarumma and some poor finishing, Villa could have been in the semi-finals. They are not, but in terms of what they gave their manager, who's been brilliant, we've talked about it, what they gave their fans, and what they have produced, basically since Unai Emery went in, I think that was very typical of it. So they'll be disappointed, but they superseded expectations in this competition, and some.
Really impressed with Aston Villa. Really, really, truly impressed. Certainly after they go down 2-0, it's 5-1, and there is no life in this tie for them. And yet they manufacture that life, and this is when I get to PSG. In order for Aston Villa to manufacture life in this tie after they're down 5-1, and yes, it's time to turn the TV off and move to something different, PSG decided that they were going to get in a back and forth still with Aston Villa. And so all the things that we have liked about PSG in this competition, the structure, the organization, the quality of the midfield, Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, Joao Neves, those guys, all of a sudden they lose control of the ball and lose control of the pace of the game, of the rhythm of the game. Instead of, hey, you know what, we're just going to sit here, absorb some pressure. The counter will be available to us if we want it. And we have the personality and the players to be able to take advantage of those counters. Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, Dembele. It's all set up perfectly for you. And you start getting in, you attack, we attack. You attack, we attack. And what we saw from PSG is that when they lose that structure and when they lose that discipline, they get stretched through the midfield, and McGinn is running freely, and Rashford is running freely, they cannot defend those moments on transition. Marquinhos and Patrick, Marquinhos in particular today, really slow. Really slow to track runners, really slow to react to where the danger was going to be. There was no reason as to why Aston Villa would be attacking 4v2, 5v3, when you're already up 2-0, already 5-1. That's inexcusable, and that has to do with lack of leadership on the field, lack of structure, lack of organization, lack of presence of players that can say, hey, we don't have to go chase over there. We'll be fine right here. If you do that, you limit the space for Aston Villa. Aston Villa are not able to get back into this. And while I'm impressed with Aston Villa, this is more, I think, on PSG and the manner in which they lost control of this match.
Frank?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ali. Because, credits to Aston Villa. They never gave up, and they fought hard. But they had a chance to be alive because of Paris Saint-Germain, because Paris Saint-Germain made everything to keep the villains again alive. And when Paris Saint-Germain were at the top, there were no games. There was no games. They were leading 2-0, and everybody was ready to switch off. But because, I don't know, because of a certain sloppiness from some players, and you were mentioning Marquinhos, but also Vitinha in the middle of the park, and we saw that in the third goal, showing you back. They didn't play. They pretended to play, thinking that they were better than the villains and thinking that it was already over. And Aston Villa showed something otherwise, and that became difficult, because when you are sloppy, it's a hard time for you to come back to a good concentration and being ready to fight again. So they could have been out of the competition because of without Donnarumma, without Pacho at the end of the game, Aston Villa could have scored 6 or 7 games, and we'd have talked about another remontada. And it's a big lesson for Paris Saint-Germain, and it's where I agree with Ali. They have to keep the structure, and they have to keep the intensity they are capable of giving defensively. Offensively, yes, but defensively also. Marquinhos was the Marquinhos I saw against Real Madrid like 3 or 4 years ago when Madrid won the Champions League and won at Santiago Bernabeu against Paris Saint-Germain, where it wasn't the Marquinhos we have known. And I need a revenge from Marquinhos because he's a leader, he's the skipper of Paris Saint-Germain, and he wasn't the skipper today.
But they're through.
Well, yes.
And it's a lesson learned in a sense that you're unscathed. And we've talked about them winning this competition. That's how good they've been in 2025. They won't win it if they play like that in the second half. They won't. And we'll get to Barcelona, but they're the same. If they play like how they played in Dortmund tonight, and maybe there was some different reasons for it, they won't win this competition.
Frank, it's interesting you mentioned the remontadas that PSG have suffered before. How much does that play into that second half performance where it's almost a feeling of deja vu, it makes you nervous, you think, oh no, it's all happening again?
Yeah, it's like a curse, so it comes back into your head when you're in the middle of the park, I guess. And I'm pretty sure when they conceded 2 goals in 2 minutes, some people, maybe even the players, they started to think about it. And Marquinhos was already there. He's maybe the only one who was already there. So maybe he thought about it. And they have drawn like crazy there in Barcelona. And today we're almost there. And yeah, it's like a curse to Paris Saint-Germain in the quarterfinal to lose stupidly, I would say, a game because you're not there, you're not ready to fight, and you are scared to lose. And when you are scared to lose 100% of the time, you lose.
But help me out here.
Tell me.
Keep using this word, remontada.
Yeah, the comeback. So obviously it comes from the Barcelona 4-0 up and then the...
But it was only 3-1 in the first leg.
Yes.
Has it become a remontada during the game?
Yes, exactly. It could have been a remontada.
Can't we just use a comeback?
Yeah, they were 5-1, yeah.
Just speak to me. True. Speak to me in layman's terms.
Real Madrid, in the Real Madrid segment, remontada will be coming up a lot once again. So get ready for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not skipping to the Real Madrid segment. What I'm going to say, though, is that those 2 games tonight are a warning for Arsenal tomorrow, and maybe a little, shot in the arm for Real Madrid, thinking, maybe we can come back. Look at these games tonight. Look at Aston Villa. Look at Borussia Dortmund.
Just looking at the semi-final, it will either be against Arsenal or Real Madrid. What will have those teams learnt from PSG that they could take advantage from today? Or is it a unique situation in the fact that PSG just completely lost it in the second half?
Well, I think that's kind of worrying when you're playing a side in Aston Villa who are a good side, but not... I mean, between them and Dortmund, they were the outsiders, right? Probably Villa were... I don't know if Villa were the highest odds, but... So if they can do that to you... I mean, what could Villa have scored in the second half? 5 or 6? Easily? I mean, PSG could have had a couple themselves, don't get me wrong, but Villa were pushing, so they're always going to leave gaps. So they're going to learn... Or what PSG are going to learn is that they can't play like that and win this competition. There has to be more structure. There has to be more discipline when you have the ball and when you don't have the ball. And sometimes when you have the ball, that's when to be the most disciplined, rather than everybody going off like, hear 'em, scare 'em.
Right.
4-5 getting forward, everybody trying to get on the score sheet. Then you lose it. Before you know it, your back four's exposed, which Villa got in the first half. For the Nuno Mendes goal, it was a 4-on-2. The first half of the game, I know you're trying to get back in it, but you shouldn't leave yourself as exposed as they did. 4-on-2, and Nuno Mendes scores. So we know PSG could probably go toe-to-toe with anybody in the competition in terms of a football match and play. But in terms of their shape, they got exposed but got away with it tonight.
Did we get too excited about PSG? After those 2 matches against Liverpool and that first leg against Aston Villa, did we put our expectations too high?
Well, I think the main contrast between today's performance against Aston Villa and that second leg performance against Liverpool at Liverpool is that was a fearless performance. This second half was fearful. PSG, they started to get nervous, and when you get nervous, you start making silly decisions. And while I love me some Nuno Mendes and Hakimi attacking, you have to understand what the game calls for. And so there is no need for Hakimi to be bombing down the right-hand side and Nuno Mendes bombing down the left-hand side. And while he scored today, and people will say, well, that's why we love Nuno Mendes. Well, at some point, you've already done the job. You already scored 2 goals, so there's no need to get in this up and down. And then in the second half, once they got fearful of the outcome, fearful of, are we really going to blow this? Is this really going to happen? Then you stop playing. That is the part that, if I'm a PSG fan, I would be concerned about. That when he got to a high moment of pressure, tension, and the expectations were on PSG to be the ones that would advance, the team's reaction was to stop playing and stop running and stop pressing and stop getting to second balls, which are the sort of things that they did against Liverpool and did so very well and had all of us impressed by them. I still think that PSG will get a lot out of advancing in the manner in which they did today and will be useful to them in the next round.
Unless Sam was wrong, if we've been hypercritical of Unai Emery, and it's hard to because they were not the favourites in this tie, and they made such a fist of it. If he wasn't absolutely knackered, I found the Rashford substitution...
Because he was just brilliant, wasn't he?
And maybe it was a case of, right, I haven't really got any more midfielders to take off. If I've got to have somebody in the middle of the park. Asensio's come on, Watkins come on for Rashford, Ramsey came on. The only other one was Morgan Rogers, who did have a couple of good runs late on with the ball, to be fair, but had been relatively, I would say, quiet-ish up to then, certainly not as impactful as Marcus Rashford. And Rashford just looked as if he had the beating on a one-on-one of any of that back four. And his set piece, as we saw from the set piece that Konza should have scored, was amazing. And unless he'd put the hands up, which I don't think you do in the quarter-final, and say, I got nothing left in the tank, to me, that was a player, somehow, I don't know how, but somehow he had to find a way to leave Rashford on the field.
For PSG, Frank, moving forward, was that second half an anomaly, or was it something that would concern you as a fan going forward, as one of the favourites to win this tournament?
I'm pretty confident that it won't happen anymore because they like to be in the position of an underdog in Champions League, and we saw that against Liverpool clearly, that they give 100% because they don't feel the pressure of being the favourite. And against Aston Villa, yeah, we thought they were the favourite, but not that much because they had to confirm. And today, after 2-0, they knew that they were qualified, and they let it go. And it's where the young age of most players have shown up, and the leadership weren't there, with Marquinhos, for example, not stepping up. They are in danger. But I've no doubt, like either against Real Madrid or Arsenal, that won't happen. That won't happen because they won't lead like 2 or 3-0. I don't think that happened. And they're not the favourites. So they're going to fight so hard to show to the world that they deserve to be in the final of the Champions League.
I think they're the favourites against Arsenal, Frank. I think the bookies still have them favourites against Arsenal.
Well, you know that they will have to show it. And first, they play the first game at the Emirates. They play against Arsenal. So I'm not sure it's going to be an easy task there. And maybe they're going to be late, meaning that they're going to be maybe under 1 or 2 goals. So they will have to fight at the Parc des Princes. So I don't see that scenario where it's going to be, yeah, the other favourites, it's going to be easy against the Gunners. I don't think so.
But I was just going to say, but what we saw tonight in the second half, Frank, you see a lot more French football than us, obviously. You watch one game, you've seen more French football, to be fair. But does this sort of thing happen occasionally in League One and they get away with it? Or was that as exposed as you've seen PSG in the second half?
I have to say that that was more kind of an accident since mid-December, where Paris Saint-Germain have been very professional, and even it was an easier task to play against, I don't know, some other team like Saint-Etienne or some other clubs comparing to Aston Villa. They didn't do that. They finished the job. But it wasn't that difficult. I mean, you have to give credit to the villains. I mean, they have quality. I'm a big fan of McKean, and for example, what he did on the second goal that they scored, that's exceptional. And after Rashford or the third goal, they didn't. I think the Paris Saint-Germain players didn't expect that kind of reaction from Aston Villa, and they're not used to that. In the Liga, it's mostly they do the job, they win, and it must be maybe hard the first 30 minutes because of the pressure if they play away from home, but they kill the game and the opponent is not capable of coming back, which is something happened today, and that's maybe the difference between that and the Liga. So it's a lesson. And they really learned a lesson today, and they really have to take care of that, because otherwise they're going to be smashed the next game.